What's going on, YouTube? It's your boy Lonnie Reacts, and today we are back with another reaction video. Now, this video is titled West Africa's Most Beautiful Kingdom African Cities and Architecture, Episode 3. Now, immediately from the thumbnail, I know that this video is going to be about Kumasi and the Ashanti, extremely sophisticated empire that rose around the 16th century, I believe, extremely sophisticated. They had these massive road systems. They had 2 and 3 story buildings. They had impluvium and compluvium systems for storing rainwater and filtering the rainwater for drinking water. They lived in a fucking tropical environment. Um, just a lot. Drainage systems. They lived in the tropical environment, so it would have flooded a lot. They had clay drainage pipes to prevent these floodings. The Ashanti were extremely advanced, and it's just really fucking sad that people will purposefully ignore or lie about African history as a means of, you know, pointing these people as primitive. It's fucking research. But as usual, I don't got too much to say. Let's just jump into this video.
Greetings, denizens of the Empire. It's Jabari here. Welcome back to the next episode of African Cities and Architecture. In the first episode of the series, we gave a general overview of the prevalence of earthen building traditions on the African continent, including the reasons for its popularity throughout history, as well as the pros and cons of its use. While there are many other building materials and techniques throughout the African continent that we will cover throughout this series, today we will take a deeper dive into earthen architecture, focusing on
That's my favorite type of architecture in just pre-colonial Africa. The earthen architecture. A lot of these forest West African kingdoms, they made their cities, houses out of earth and mud brick. Now, in the Sahel, they just used mud brick and occasional sandstone. I think I like the earthen architecture more because they could just do more shit with it, and they did a lot more shit with it. For example, those impluvium and compluvium systems, and plus both adobe, or which is mud brick, and earth is so good for the environments that these people would have lived in, the tropical environments or the desert, because that hot, that heat, that humidity, it would have been hell if built with stone or just some other dumbass material. So they use this. It's just fucking ingenious. A hot ass day in Africa, you go in your house and it feel cool as fuck. This would have been ingenious, and so many people love to say mud hut. It's There's not an insult. It's it's just not.
the traditions of one specific group of people who historically inhabited what are now the countries of Ghana and the Ivory Coast. However, in the midst of my research, I decided that I would expand upon this topic further and cover not only the architecture and the cities, but the engineering feats as a whole. Today, we will talk about the fantastic ingenuity of the Ashanti people.
Ashanti architecture, so fucking beautiful. This is my favorite pre-colonial African architecture. Ghana and Nigeria in general, fucking chef's kiss. It was fucking so beautiful, and a lot of these buildings in Kumasi would have been 2 story, like, and they even had toilets. One thing I forgot to mention, they had toilets that they would I believe they had flushing mechanisms for these toilets as well. I read something about this where this British missionary who visited the Ashanti, I can't think, Thomas Edward Bodwick, that's his name. He visited the Ashanti. He also drew these sketches right here. And he would talk about just how fucking sophisticated these people were. They were so sophisticated he didn't want to call them Africans. He called them the lost tribes of Israel. Just dumb shit. But these people were extremely sophisticated, like extremely.
In the first episode of this series, we slightly touched on the advanced architectural traditions of the Ashanti people, who once controlled a vast empire that spanned an area covering much of what are now the modern-day West African countries of Ghana, and the Ivory Coast. We discussed how they effectively utilized earthen materials for construction, in spite of their kingdom existing in a literal rainforest, or an area that receives roughly 55 inches of rainfall per year. Construction of earthen dwellings has been practiced since ancient times throughout West Africa and the entire world as a whole. As a
The
material
entire world used earth as building structures, but I think the thing is, around a certain time, a lot of people started moving onto stone, just different building materials. Africans stuck with their with mud, brick, and earth. They didn't need stone, and even then, many African civilizations built with stone, and those many African civilizations fucking fell. Ouagadougou, Great Zimbabwe, the Kingdom of Congo. I can go on and go on. Many African civilizations built with stone. Building with stone in these environments, though, it just would be retarded, you know.
used have thermal properties favorable to the preservation of comfortable temperatures, especially in tropical regions of the world like Africa. While this is a relatively seamless process in the more arid regions of Africa like the desert, Sahel, and savanna, the wetter regions farther to the south present a persistent challenge to the durability and reliability of earthen structures. Not only is it remarkable that the Ashanti were able to utilize a material that is so volatile in a climate prone to heavy rains, it is also worth noting that they were able to optimize this fragile material nearly to perfection in both function and aesthetic. And as a matter of fact, there's something else that provides great function and aesthetic. I've been enjoying some wonderful traditional medicine that is not only aesthetically appealing but also helps me function better throughout the day. The most excellent examples of Ashanti architecture could be found in the imperial capital, Kumasi, between the 18th and 19th centuries. While the present-day city
One very interesting thing about pre-colonial Africa as well, they had a lot of like pyramids or pyramid type of things that would have resembled pyramids and just a lot of their architecture. For example, these little things right here, these would have been placed on houses or just walls as the sign of decor, and it was just fucking beautiful. They would have snakes on them, bronzes, castings, just basically designing these things. And Benin City had a lot of these, especially the Oba's Palace. Man, I just wish we could see these fucking cities at their peak. I really want to like a video game or something, or a show about Benin City or Ife or the Ashanti. Just man, I need it. I really do.
is primarily composed of modern building materials like concrete and steel, the indigenous building practices consisted almost entirely of earthen materials, and as far as I know, the only exceptions to this would have been some paved roads and the royal palace of the emperor, or Asantehene. European visitors to the region prior to this date recorded that it was 2 stories in height and composed entirely of stone. It was built to resemble European architecture. In many ways, the Ashanti king acknowledged and even admired some aspects of European societies and incorporated many elements of their culture, including mass adoption of firearms, as well as his aforementioned stone palace. In fact, it was constructed by the labor of Dutch masons with the assistance of other laborers from the Fante kingdoms, located to the south. The Fante were a Khan people.
One thing about the Kumasi as well, Ashanti, they started to mass produce their own firearms around the 1850s and 60s. And this shit was actually getting pretty fucking scary for the British. And I believe the British invaded during negotiations with one of the Ashanti kings. And this caused the Fourth Great Anglo-Ashanti War, which was the last war, and the British were able to defeat the Ashanti. And this was with the invention of the Maxim machine gun. A lot of people don't understand just how important the machine gun was to the colonization of Africa. Before then, most African civilizations, they, how do I put this? They had more favorable terms against Europeans. And there's just so much myths and just misconceptions about the colonization of Africa. It's insane to me just how fucking stupid some people are, especially on this topic, because they just be so incorrect and so damn wrong.
Who share historical, cultural, and linguistic ties to the Ashanti. The Ashanti King's palace was said to resemble a museum, as each room housed various cultural relics of great significance to both the Ashanti people, surrounding peoples, as well as foreign objects from faraway lands. In fact, 3 bronze ewers, or water pitchers from 14th century England, somehow made their way all the way into the Ashanti Imperial Collection, and to this day, historians are still puzzled as to how and when this happened. I made an entire video on this topic, which I will leave a link to at the end screen. It has also been noted that the palace contained innumerable amounts of books written in many languages. The spectacles of the Ashanti Palace were described in this vibrant account in the London Times in 1874. The rooms upstairs remind me of Wardour Street. Each was a perfect old curiosity shop. Books in many languages, Bohemian glass, clocks, silver plates, old furniture, Persian rugs, Kidderminster carpets, pictures and engravings, numberless chests, and coffers. With these were many specimens of Moorish and Ashanti handicraft. British visitors described Ashanti roads as long and broad, and they boasted a reputation as one of the most imposing examples of an indigenous sub-Saharan African road system in existence prior to colonization by Europeans. And, as mentioned before, some of these roads were paved in stone.
Many African civilizations had paved roads. I don't know why some people think Africans were retarded. Just fucking do a simple amount of research on history and you'll come to figure out, oh, Africans were doing the same shit as most people, or even doing way better. They were. It's just insane to me how fucking stupid some people are. Just ignorant. It's insane.
Pon was the word used for them in the Twi language spoken by the Ashanti people, a word that translates to Great Roads. There were a total of 8 main Nkwantimpon that were built and maintained by the Ashanti government, as well as several smaller roads radiating from the south and the north of the great capital of Kumasi, connecting other important cities like Bunduku and Yendi.
Yep.
Given the aforementioned rainforest climate, it was imperative to have this road system consistently maintained by a dedicated labor force, lest it be devastated by heavy rains and subsequently overtaken by potholes and persistent overgrowth. These roads, as well as the borders of the empire, were patrolled by a professional corps of dedicated uniformed police officers known as Amradofo, a word translating to those responsible for maintaining the law. These Amradofo were distinguished by standardized uniforms and long hair. They also carried whips, knives, and muskets at all times. These road patrols ensured safe passage for all travelers and merchants throughout the empire. It is also worth noting that most contemporary states didn't have such a sharp distinction between their military and police forces. However, similar to the Roman imperial road system, the Ashanti Nkwantimpon were initially constructed specifically for military purposes, as they allowed the army to be deployed seamlessly to any part of the expansive territory without the need to track through the unforgiving West African rainforest. If you'd like to learn more about this massive road system, I've made an entire video describing it in great detail. I will leave a link to it at the end screen. The Ashanti Imperial Police Force was so efficient that British visitors commented favorably on how free of crime the city was in comparison to contemporary London. One notable example was when a British visitor lost a valuable golden seal. Once the Ashanti king was informed, a gong was sounded, and no more than an hour later, the seal was returned to its original owner.
Damn.
The people of the city were remarkably just and disciplined, and would report on any crime in a prompt manner. All citizens followed a strict set of laws collectively known as the 77 Laws of Anochio Komfo. Kumasi, the imperial capital of Ashanti, had a population of around 40,000 people and was built on large, flat, open land, spanning over 4 miles in circumference. It was divided into 77 wards, which is significant for 2 reasons. The first one being that the number 7 is a sacred number in many world religions, including the one practiced by the Ashanti. What this also indicates is the fact that the layout of the city was planned, something that was relatively rare around the world before the 20th century, and requires considerable amounts of organization and structure. This city consisted of 27 main streets, one of which was over 300 feet wide. Many of these streets were lined on both.
That's one thing about West African civilizations and kingdoms, bro. They had some wide ass streets, bro. like just wide as fuck. And it was simply for traffic to and from the palace, or to and from out of the city. Um, I'm not sure about Kumasi, but I do know that Benin City had street lights. They would light palm oil lamps at night, for illumination to and from the Oba's palace, for trade, on traffic, etc. So I wonder, did the Ashanti also have palm oil lamps that they would light at night, to illuminate? I wonder, the Ashanti had palm oil that had, different types of oil, so it's definitely possible. I've never actually heard about it.
Both sides with large, shady banyan trees, which provide the city's residents with some much needed protection from the brutal West African sun. Streets were also swept daily, with trash collected and burned at the back.
Another thing, I know I keep pausing it, but again, so many West African societies would just sweep their streets like daily, daily, daily. The streets were so fucking clean, and so many explorers would speak on how fucking clean and just nice these streets were. Um, Man, fucking amazing. I need a video game, or just a TV show or a movie about these West African kingdoms. Ghana, Benin, the Ivory Coast, Nigeria. I desperately need it. And I know a lot of people, the most famous West African kingdoms are those Sahelian kingdoms like Mali, Songhai, Ouagadougou. But in my opinion, these kingdoms were superior. And I think so many people like to gravitate towards those Sahelian kingdoms because it gives like more of an actual medieval type of vibe. Warfare. They had more distant trade routes, and they were more known to the world at that time. Man, these forest kingdoms were fucking advanced. I truly believe they were better than the Sahelian empires. I genuinely do.
Just as frequently. In fact, when a British mission traveled to Kumasi in 1819, a messenger prompted them to wait in a town about a mile south of the royal capital until the king finished his bath. High-ranking officials in Ashanti society took daily baths as well, and British explorer Bowditch described the inhabitants as clean, cheerful, friendly, and respectful, and that they were as nice and clean in their dwellings as in their persons. Oral hygiene too was something of great significance throughout the city, as it was noted that the inhabitants brushed their teeth daily by chewing the end of a fibrous stick until it frayed.
I really think this was normal across like the entirety of Africa. Like genuinely, Mali, the Sahelian Empire, South Africa, Central Africa. This shit was actually pretty normal. I think it was just African tradition in general. I even think the North Africans would do this. I'm not sure. I do know Egyptians would do this. I'm not sure about any other North African entities.
And using the frayed end as one would bristles on a brush. He further observed that the city as a whole was remarkably clean. The buildings even had indoor toilets, which were often located on the second floors, but were invariably located in small closets on the edges of the buildings and at the lowest angle of the roof slopes. These closets consisted of hollow pillars that would double as support columns if they were located on the second floor. The toilets themselves were not very wide in circumference, but were dug to impressive depths and flushed by pouring buckets of boiling water into them, a practice that prevented the buildup of offensive odors.
Yep. They would also use ash. Ash is rich in alkaline compounds, excuse me, and they'd pour, tons of ash, after pouring the boiling water, they'd pour some ash, and, this shit would keep the toilets clean. Like, bro, these cities were fucking so advanced, bro. Africa needs to be talked about more. Pre-colonial, medieval, ancient, it needs to be talked about more. Desperately.
The structures themselves range from small one-story single-room huts to large multi-story rooms regularly exceeding 2 stories in height, the former of which was often used to incarcerate prisoners. They were composed of sun-baked clay brick supported by bamboo frames, and their upper floors consisted of wattle and daub. Typical structures differed significantly from Western households. Instead of one large multi-room building surrounded by a yard, most Ashanti family homes consisted of several smaller structures that surrounded a courtyard, with each building serving
again, sorry for pausing. But that's really just those forest West African kingdoms and city states in general. This was their type of architecture. Multiple small little houses connected to a courtyard, and these courtyards would store impluvium and compluvium systems. To store rainwater for drinking. This was a very efficient way to have drinking water for the populace. And they had many more shit. This shit was insane to me that it just not talked. It's just not talked about. And people just love to lie about African history. It hurts my heart and it pisses me off just how fucking stupid some people are.
As its own room with a very specific purpose. The courtyard located in the center of these buildings served a communal role within the family, and generally, people of wealthy and noble classes had large homes containing several courtyards. The buildings were coated in a generously applied layer of white plaster with the lower sections bearing a red painted finish. New paint was reapplied frequently, so the structures always assumed a new and well-maintained appearance. All parts of the buildings were polished to a glistening sheen, contrary to the typical image of the rural, dusty, and cracked African mud hut village that dominates popular
I hate this shit. It's so fucking stupid. Like, why are people so fucking dumb? Like, the 5 seconds of the smallest amount of research will show you, oh, okay. No, these people were clearly living in sophisticated cities, sophisticated houses. They had sophisticated hygiene, sophisticated water management, sophisticated urban sophistication. Which, people are just actually really fucking stupid. And it actually makes me mad that I have to coexist on a planet with people who are so fucking dumb. And I'm sorry I keep pausing it, but, it's irking my nerves.
Imagination. Frequently, these structures included bas reliefs throughout their walls, in the shapes of various indigenous pictographic symbols known as adinkra. Additionally, these reliefs were constructed across windows in a similar manner to the floral arabesques of Islamic architecture. Sometimes they were painted red, and the windows of more important structures were sometimes plated in gold about as thick as cartridge paper. British explorer Bowditch was incredibly impressed with the sophistication and grandeur of the city and its architecture. He described the several hundreds of buildings surrounding the king's palace as large, two-story, neat buildings that were scrupulously clean, nicely decorated, with polished clay red bas-relief designs, and well-maintained. They were open to the street from the front and shaded with well-built verandas. They were publicly accessible for palaver meetings, recreation, and other communal activities. They were also elevated above the street level, likely as a means of protection from flooding, and access was achieved via large steps made of shining polished clay painted in red. The floors of the interiors and the walls were built in the same manner, polished to a sheen, and this shining coat of paint was reapplied nightly. This trend of polishing walls and floors was also mentioned by Dutch writer Ulfert Dapper when describing the dwellings of the Benin Empire. The process of achieving this shine was similar to that used to create dorodongos, or Japanese clay balls. A combination of repetitive friction and compression on a wet outer layer of hardened clay that is allowed to dry afterwards, and repeat. Roofs were composed of neatly trimmed palm leaves arranged into overlapping panels like shingles, although there are some old photos of Ashanti structures bearing proper wooden shingles, although it is not clear whether or not this was a local development. The same can be said for some structures from the Benin Kingdom, notably the royal palace of the Benin Empire, which is frequently described and depicted with wooden shingles identical in appearance to those of the Ashanti structures. With that being said, it is not clear whether these traditions were born from traditional West African techniques or if they were adopted later after European influence. Bamboo poles served as support beams for the roofs of Ashanti structures and were polished and painted black. Offices of government officials were located in the largest of these sophisticated structures, located near the royal palace, where they conducted state business. Located behind the public areas were some 40 rooms which served as private living quarters for these same government officials and their families.
Okay.
All throughout Kumasi, markets were open from 8 a.m. to sunset. Some sold a wide variety of foods including meats like beef, mutton, pork, antelope, monkey, and poultry to include chicken and duck, as well as many crops like yams, plantains, corn, sugarcane, rice, fruit, tobacco, and many vegetables. A wide variety of goods for sale included smoking pipes, beads, looking glasses, sandals, silk, cotton, cloth, pillows, threads, calabashes, gunpowder, beer, palm wine, rum,
Everything.
and gin. It is important to note
One thing,
that
one thing I do love about pre-colonial African history, bro, there were like taverns and people would drink palm wine and get drunk as shit and just tell stories and have fights. It was just like the rest of the world, bro. And people love to act like Africa was just behind or some shit, bro. Just do like 10 seconds of fucking research. It's not hard. Not.
many contemporary British and American towns of the time paled in comparison when it came to the sheer quantity and variety of goods available for purchase. Today, we tend to take for granted the availability, quantity, and variety of exotic goods and foods that are available to us.
We really do.
This wasn't the case in most of the world during this time in history. It is also worth noting that Kumasi was 140 miles from the coast, and the trek consisted mostly of dense forest with narrow footpaths. This clearly demonstrated that the Ashanti Empire held a firm and imposing grasp on the supply lines and economy of the region. Unfortunately, nearly all Ashanti traditional structures have been destroyed either deliberately by British soldiers during the 19th and 20th centuries or fallen into ruin and replaced by more modern structures. Even the Aban Palace of the Ashanti king was blown up by the British in 1874 after being first constructed only 52 years earlier. The once beautiful metropolitan city of Kumasi now primarily consists of structures composed of concrete walls and corrugated iron rooftops, and though these modern materials are more durable than the adobe and thatch structures of the Ashanti imperial era, they lack the complexity, comfort, and beauty of the latter. According to
I
UNESCO,
need more African countries to build build with their indigenous knowledge. For example, Mali. I want Mali to make more mud brick buildings. All those Sahelian countries, I want them to make more mud brick structures. These forest West African countries, um, earth. I would love to see like just earthen architecture or clay, etc. I'd love to see it. There's actually a lot of depictions of these type of architectural houses or buildings, etc. And they're just so fucking beautiful. And I just want to see more of it. Honestly, I really do.
only 10 sites of the Ashanti traditional buildings remain in Ghana to present day, all of which are shrines. Only one of them retains the original thatch roof located in Besease. The rest consist of shallow pitched, rust-covered metal sheets. Many of them are in a broken and disheveled state, lacking the polish and finesse of times past, covered in cracks and algae. Others are critically endangered unless immediate conservation efforts are deployed, while others lay in complete ruin, consisting of little more than piles of rubble. Perhaps in the future, more care and resources will be dedicated towards the preservation of these priceless relics of the sophisticated African kingdom, and maybe even the efforts of African architects like Diabedo Francis Kere can inspire a rebirth of traditional techniques, utilizing Africa's unique geography, environments, and building materials to take advantage of the beauty, splendor, and efficient properties of indigenous Ashanti structures. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to like, share.
This was a good video. As I said, man, I need more people to talk about these West African city states, these West African kingdoms, these West African entities. They were very sophisticated. They were not primitive. They had writing. They had the wheel. Just because some didn't, don't mean all did. And it's just really fucking stupid to me that people are actually really fucking dumb and can't even do like fucking 20 seconds of research. Is truly insane to me. And what's also insane to me is the fact that people will lie so much about African history that the lies will almost damn near come to truth. Because when you research some of these things, the fucking AI will immediately show, like for example, if you research the wheel in pre-colonial Africa, a fucking AI will say, yeah, pre-colonial Africa didn't have the wheel, when we know damn well they had the wheel. The Ashanti had the wheel. What are we doing? And they even have wheel toys, just like the Mesoamericans. They didn't really utilize the wheeled object for anything else, but they still had knowledge of the wheel. Like, it's really not hard to comprehend. Some people just didn't use the wheel because of their environment. Um, the Ashanti were in a rainforest where the tsetse fly was very prevalent. The tsetse fly kills almost all cattle, so wheeled transportation just was not utilized. It's, some people are really fucking stupid and just can't think with their fucking head, but it's insane to me. And the Sahelian empires, they had fucking water wheels. They had water wheels that were very similar to Persian wheels. Like, we have Arab historians telling us about this. But yeah, man, some people are just really fucking stupid, and it irks my nerves. This is a really good video though, and if you like this video, please subscribe and like, and I'll see you next time.